On the 5th of December, 1872, a ship was found drifting alone in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Her sails were still set. Her cargo was untouched. In her hold sat 6 months of food and fresh water. And every single person aboard, all 10 of them, was gone. No bodies, no signs of a struggle, no explanation. More than 150 years later, we still don't know what happened to her. And the deeper you look, the stranger it gets. Let's start with the facts, because the facts alone are unsettling enough. Her name was the Mary Celeste, an American brigantine, 282 tons, built in Nova Scotia. On the 7th of November, she left New York Harbor bound for Genoa, Italy, carrying 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. Aboard were her captain, Benjamin Spooner Briggs, 37, a lifelong sailor with a spotless reputation, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 crewmen. 10 people. Nothing about it suggested disaster. The crossing was rough. For 2 weeks she fought heavy weather across the Atlantic, and Briggs kept his log through all of it. Then at 5 in the morning on the 25th of November, with the island of Santa Maria in sight, the log simply stops. No warning, no distress note. It just ends like a sentence cut off halfway through. 9 days later, the Dei Gratia under Captain David Morehouse was crossing the same stretch of ocean about 400 miles east of the Azores when her crew saw a vessel moving strangely. Sails partly set, yawing, nobody correcting her course. Morehouse recognized her at once. She had left New York days before his own ship, and he knew her captain personally. He sent 2 men across, Oliver DeVoe and John Wright. They boarded expecting to find people. The ship was empty. Not ransacked, empty. The crew's belongings sat untouched in their quarters. The galley was tidy, no meal half-eaten, no sign of panic. The cargo was almost entirely intact. There was food and water enough for half a year, and no one to eat any of it. But it's the small details that have kept investigators awake ever since. 3.5 feet of water sloshed in the hold, a serious amount, but nowhere near enough to sink a ship that size. Both cargo hatches had been lifted off and were lying on the deck. One of the ship's 2 pumps had been taken apart, and beside it lay a sounding rod, the simple tool a sailor uses to measure how much water is in the hold. Someone had been checking, and the ship's only lifeboat, along with her navigational instruments, was gone. So this wasn't an attack, and it wasn't a wreck. It was a deliberate, hurried departure. 10 people, including a 2-year-old child, chose to leave a perfectly seaworthy ship in the open Atlantic for a small open boat. The question that has echoed for a century and a half is simply, why? She was sailed to Gibraltar for a hearing. The Attorney General, Frederick Solly Flood, was convinced from the start that this was murder, or a fraud between Briggs and Morehouse to split the salvage money. He investigated for more than 3 months, hunting for blood, violence, anything at all. He found nothing. The theory that seemed most obvious was the one the facts refused to support. Other explanations followed, and everyone has a hole in it. Pirates. The cargo was still there. Pirates don't politely leave 1,700 barrels of alcohol behind. Mutiny.
We know the Keith might lend you for
Briggs
the
was a fair captain, and there were no signs of violence aboard. A waterspout, a sea quake, a giant wave. Each would have left damage on a ship found essentially undamaged. Then there's the alcohol. When the cargo was unloaded in Genoa, 9 of the 1,701 barrels were completely empty. And here's the detail that turns trivia into a clue. Those 9, and only those 9, were red oak. All the rest were white oak. White oak is watertight. It's what wine barrels are made of. Red oak is porous and leaks. So 9 barrels had been quietly bleeding alcohol vapor into a sealed hold for weeks. One theory holds those fumes ignited in a brief pressure wave. A bang with no fire, enough to blow the hatches open and drive everyone into the lifeboat to wait for an explosion that never came. But the explanation most historians now favor is quieter and sadder. A dangerous cargo. Terrible weather. Water in the hold. A pump that had failed or clogged, so the crew took it apart. And with it broken, that sounding rod may have given a reading that made things look far worse than they were. If Briggs believed his ship was going down, the responsible thing, The thing a good captain does is get his wife, his daughter, and his men off her. So he lowered the lifeboat, and out on that water, something went wrong. A line parted, a wave took them, and a seaworthy ship sailed on without them, perfectly intact for 9 more days. If that's what happened, then the most haunting fact of all is this: the Mary Celeste was never sinking. They abandoned her for nothing. The safest place in the entire Atlantic Ocean was the ship they had just stepped off. In 1884, a young doctor named Arthur Conan Doyle, years before Sherlock Holmes, published a short story about a ghost ship loosely based on the case. Fiction. He even got the name slightly wrong. But it was so vivid that his invented details bled into public memory, and people have confused the two ever since. The mystery became a legend, and the legend buried the 10 real people underneath it. Because that's the part worth holding on to. Benjamin Briggs was a father who took his family to sea because he didn't want to be apart from them. Sarah played the melodeon in their cabin. Sophia was 2 years old. They boarded an ordinary ship on an ordinary morning, expecting to see Italy. And somewhere out on that vast, indifferent water, they made a decision we will never fully understand, and the ocean simply kept the rest. The Mary Celeste sailed on for another 13 years. She was found, boarded, examined, and argued over. Everything survived except the answer. If unsolved stories like this stay with you long after the video ends, subscribe. Next time, I'm telling you about the town that vanished and left behind a single word. I'll see you there.